Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are podcasts. Find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ at ArtistFirst.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Scott. And I am Michael Lyons.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Margaret.
And tonight we're going to talk about everybody's favorite group of people, the Stoics.
Yes.
They were a fun bunch. Especially Epictetus.
Oh, Epictetus.
Epictetus is the name I can't say well.
And
it was good old
Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius, and then Seneca, the guy who invented apple juice.
And Zeno of Citium.
And Zeno, who was probably a foreigner. But yes, we're going to talk about the Stoics tonight. And in fact, we're going to talk about a modern-day Stoic, or at least somebody who had written a lot about the Stoics, by the name of William B. Irvine. And we have a quote from him, and we should probably just lead off with the quote and then just launch into it.
Okay.
So if you wouldn't mind if you would read it very stoically.
Okay, I can do that. Stoicism, understood properly, is a cure for a disease. The disease in question is the anxiety, grief, fear, and various other negative emotions that plague humans and prevent them from experiencing a joyful existence. William B. Irvine.
William B. Irvine. So William B., in the fine tradition of the Stoics, is really concerned with the way, really, at the heart of Stoicism, in my opinion anyway, is sort of the kernel of truth, which is that it's almost expressed in that ancient saying, which is, worry about the things that you can control, and anything you cannot control, let it go. And in essence, it's almost Hakuna Matata. This could be the Stoics. Don't worry, everything's going to be all right, or don't worry, be happy. It could be the Stoics' kind of motto, and yet they kind of have a bad rap, mainly because I think they were very sort of dour-looking fellows. At least their statues or their images are. But here you have Irvine kind of opining a bit on really the heart of or rather the application of Stoicism, and I think his concern is exactly kind of what we just expressed, is that Stoicism is misunderstood. And if you look at it from the point of view of, Marcus Aurelius, who's one of the early Stoics, said that anything which can be endured should be. You just, if you can put up with something, then just shut up and put up with it. And Tolle says sort of the same thing, doesn't he? He says basically, you have three kind of options in any situation. You can change it, or if you can't change it, you can put up with it, or you can move away from it. And if you can't change it, and you can't move away from it, you just got to put up with it. And in fact, the practice of in essence enduring the moment of now, and with the absolute understanding that the moment of now is just that. It is not something that needs to be enlivened and internalized and worried about and disliked and actively making yourself miserable about it. You just say, well, this is the moment of now, and I can't move away from it. I can't change it, so I'm just going to tolerate it in good humor, and then see what happens next. And so Stoicism, again, understood properly, is a cure for that disease. And the disease is all the all the hell you put yourself through trying to fight against that which you cannot fight against, which is reality in many ways, but just a particular event or situation which you just don't have any control over. You have no way to avoid it. You have no way to change it. And you just have to endure it. And Stoicism basically is suck it up, buttercup, and move on.
Well, there are a number of core beliefs in Stoicism. And one of them, just tying into the quote where you're dealing with a disease of anxiety, grief, fear, and all this negative emotions. One of their principles is happiness isn't found in things, but in virtue alone. And that's core to what you value and the choices you make according to your values. That when you're detached from things, you can't be manipulated.
You might want to give some context for the word virtue, because I think that's one that people confuse often.
Virtue according to the Stoic.
Right.
It's an internal quality where there's a bunch of virtues, actually.
I mean, just as a thing, virtue it has to do very much with your internal value system and how closely you adhere to it. And the virtuous person, it makes... Well, go ahead.
Yeah, no, they have 4 cardinal virtues, apparently. The virtue of temperance, which incorporates courage, justice, and practical wisdom. And virtues, well, to be the Stoic is you are incorporating the temperance, which is, it's a balanced way of approaching your life. It's not extreme. Courage, meaning that you will take the step even though you may be afraid. You don't let fear rule you. Justice, which is to do what is right, intrinsically right, and practical wisdom. Common sense,
also known as common sense, which is not common.
Right. These are the 4 basic virtues that they're speaking of.
But I mean, a virtue itself. When you say someone is virtuous, you are really saying that they have an internal consistency. They have a certain set of precepts that they're following, and they will stick to them regardless of circumstance. So a virtuous person is, you could say, would be someone you would trust, because you know that if they say they're going to do something, their word is good. They have a certain internal consistency. They're a person who regardless of their own particular preference, let's say that something, you say, well, I'll buy this from you, and then for whatever reason you don't have the money or something else comes up, and rather than put the circumstance back on the other, say, well, I can't do it now because of X, Y, Z and all these excuses, the virtuous person says, I made a commitment. This is the contract. The whatever I thought was going to happen didn't happen, but I have to honor this. I mean, we also have talked about in other shows honor, and honor and virtue are very closely intertwined. So Stoicism can be thought of as a virtuous or a system of values or a system of honoring the humanity in everyone. You as a Stoic know that the other, who is maybe not as stoic as you or not as virtuous as you, still is a human being, and you still treat them as using your own internal system, your own internal value system, as a honorable, virtuous person until the point that they are not, or proven to not be. It's assuming nothing about the other, and also internally having your own value system which you adhere to. Now, this isn't the only way to do this, but once you understand what they're trying to do, what they're trying to set up here, you can see that it has a lot of inherent value in it. It has a lot of structure, a tremendous amount of structure, and a lot of what Marcus Aurelius was talking about was not just Stoicism for the individual, but Stoicism for the society. To look at a Stoic society and see how it would work out, and how the rules and ethics and everything based upon it would flow from this sort of philosophy of Stoicism.
Yes. It has a lot to do with recognizing the amount of power you have over yourself in your own life. And that only comes through a disciplined approach for the Stoics. So another foundational point for Stoics is we don't control external events. We only control our thoughts, opinions, decisions, and duties. So basically, when you realize that what you're feeling right now, or your thoughts, and it's going to push you to an extreme point in some way, shape, or form, you are the one, only you can be the one to take charge over this decision. Are you going to give in to an emotion? Are you going to give in to an opinion? Are you going to give in to your thought? Or are you going to decide to walk your way through knowing that I don't have all the answers? I may not have all the facts. I may not actually be capable of forming a real decision on this. But regardless, I still am going to do what I said I was going to do my duties. That's self-control. Even though you may be screaming about it and saying, I don't want to. That is self-control.
Yeah, and that's sort of that's central to the way the Stoics look at things. We talked about this a little bit in other shows and earlier. There's a definite philosophical connection between what would be referred to as sort of a Zen Buddhism and what was the precepts and tenets of Stoicism. And it's in both philosophies or both modalities. There's a lot of mental, application of the mental to control the body, to control the thoughts, to control the emotions, and but both and Stoicism in particular abstract the events of the world and look at them as as that which doesn't matter unless you make it matter, or as that which, any particular event, any particular, happenstance, you suddenly, have something bad happen to you, or something even good happen to you, something unexpected happens to you. The Stoic looks at that and right away evaluates it, gives him or herself the space to both perceive the event, so you are in the present moment, if you use Tolle's terms. You're in the present moment as a Stoic. You are always taking in what has happened, the current events, and looking at them with very clear eyes, with very unclouded vision. The whole idea of Stoicism is to perceive the world as it is, not as you might want it to be, or not as it might be trying to, as sort of the fantasy of I could change this, or if this, or if that. Not in the past, not in the future, but as it unfolds in front of you, the moment of now. And so that's where Irvine has kind of, to bring Irvine back into this, a lot of the anxiety, grief, and fear, which is worry about the future, fear about what might happen, grief, which is usually about loss, which is usually in the past as well, and other things that plague people are because instead of looking at the moment of now, or at the present moment, and saying, well, this is what is, and evaluating it, not letting your emotions take over, not even letting your thoughts take over. So it was sort of prefiguring of Zen, and a prefiguring, or maybe it's contemporary with Zen.
Contemporary, yeah, no,
and a prefiguring of where Tolle is.
Yes, for Tolle, but not.
Zen might have been before. I'm not sure. I mean, Stoics go back to, to 700 or 800 BC. I would think something around there.
You would have to do a little research on that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's at least that far back. It's with the Greeks, and the pre-Roman Greeks, so it's pretty far back.
Right. Okay.
Well, I mean, so the philosophy brought into the modern day is a very healthy one. As you mentioned, it concentrates the attitudes on virtues. It concentrates the attitudes on control and on not allowing thoughts and emotions to drag you into anxiety, or drag you into fear, or drag you out of the present moment and into some sort of fantasy. And also, using your internal virtue, or your internal honor system, or your internal set of rules, and applying them equally and even-handedly to every situation. You don't give yourself exceptions. You don't say, well, I said I would do this, but, I don't feel like it, and they really don't need it, and I'll just tell them that I couldn't do it, and give yourself all these excuses and outs, and sort of the easy way. The virtuous person says, no, even if I don't feel like it, even if I thought I could do it and now I don't think I can, or it's going to cost me more than I thought it was going to. I said I would do it, and my word is my bond, and so you have to fulfill it. And you don't, you also take yourself out of the outcomes portion of it, which is another sort of, Buddhist or Zen, divorce yourself from outcomes. So you divorce yourself from what might happen and just say the right thing to do is to fulfill my obligation, or what did you say, the duty, fulfill your duty, do your duty, and don't worry about what happens. So if you said you would do it, or if you're obligated to do it, and even if you don't feel like it, just do your duty and complete the task well.
It has to do with keeping your word, because that was highly valued as part of the virtue internally. If you're saying something, that you keep your word, consistency. And many times it takes a lot of self-discipline to be able to keep your word no matter what. But the Stoics also believe that the humanity has been given the potential to live this kind of life, this virtuous life, because these are qualities that are part of you. What they didn't like was the negative emotions. You weren't supposed to be run by the negative emotions. And for them, well, because most people think a Stoic has no emotions.
Right. Right.
They think of, oh, stoic means you have no response.
And I think that's the modern sort of context of the word. Is stoic is that you're just unresponsive to anything.
Right, but that wasn't the case. They just wanted to get rid of all the really toxic emotions. Because for them, what they wanted was, first of all, a high level of rational reasoning. And understanding, well, to be cautious. It's not overly optimistic.
Irrational exuberance.
Yes.
Is to be frowned upon.
As well as gratitude. People don't think of a Stoic as having gratitude and joy. Love of others.
Well, you can even see it before you go too far past it. What Irvine is talking about here in his last sentence is that the disease that Stoicism is kind of targeting really is that which stands in between a human being and joy. So we've often spoken about this where, when we were going through the trials with Christopher, and we don't need to go into all the details, but we were in a situation which everyone might, from the external looking, outside looking in, say this is misery, this is pure hell. There's nothing good in here. And yet the Stoic, or the way of that we found in experiencing this, is that the joy in every moment of existence became sweeter. It became more precious. It became more obvious with the exigency of the situation. When you are put in the situation where every moment matters, you find that joy is in every moment, even what someone might consider the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. You aren't looking for happiness. That's a completely different thing. You aren't focusing on outcomes. You're not focusing on goals. But you're realizing that this sweet intake of breath and the exhalation of same is a joyful moment of now, because it is where you are. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You're living at a height which is within the reach of every human being on earth, which people avoid for some reason, because of the distractions of this disease that Stoicism is also trying to combat. You find in extremis that there is joy in every moment, regardless of what needs to be done in that moment. Because once you accept that it needs to be done, and it's just going to be done, whatever it is, internally virtuous, honorable, fulfilling your commitments, there's joy there. And we laughed and found joy in many, many moments in what people would consider, why aren't you miserable? Why aren't you just constantly, in a black pit of despair? No, thanks.
That's not life.
Not life.
That's a projection of what someone thinks you should be, as opposed to understanding that when you're walking the path, it's very different than what you think it's going to be. In fact, nothing will prepare you for walking a path like that, where everything you thought you knew was burned to the ground.
Right. and all that you thought you knew is revealed to be no more than a fantasy, because all that you thought you knew was this comfortable, facade that you kind of built up over everything. The illusion of control, the illusion that if I do all these things, nothing bad can happen to me. All these different illusions are all propped up, and because the wind doesn't knock them down, you think they're permanent. But then the wind comes and knocks them all down. And Margaret said they burn to the ground. They're just gone. And if you had built your whole persona, your whole existence, on the permanence of these incredibly flimsy things, you feel a little destroyed at that time.
Completely disoriented.
Yeah.
Because everything you thought you knew was wrong. And so you have to find a way to reorient yourself. And that's why it takes an incredible amount of awareness and courage, as well as faith in something greater than yourself, to know that there is something that doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually, I know for myself, is going inward and touching back to the thing that doesn't ever leave or die, which is unconditional love. So you anchor yourself into that which does not leave ever. It is that which is permanent. Anchored in that, and then you begin to rebuild a pathway so that you can walk through this event, whatever this event may be.
Yeah, and again, this philosophy that we're talking about this evening, which is a little bit different, of course, but the Stoics would look at a situation like that, where you're suddenly thrust into a situation which is life and death, and you're suddenly thrust into a situation where you have no control, and all of your precepts, all of your these sort of paint by numbers, pre-learned sort of rote things to do. Oh, you just do this, you just do that, you turn this knob, you push that lever, and everything gets fine again. No, and all that's gone. There are no knobs, no levers, everything's gone. And the Stoics would look at that and say, okay, there's nothing in this situation that I can control. So stop worrying about it. You are present in that moment. You're using all of your faculties to be aware, and you have one thing that you can do, which is decide that if you cannot change this and you cannot avoid it, you can endure it. And once you set your mind, in the Stoics parlance, because it's not really the mind here, but once you set your mind that you're going to endure this, that yes, this is the new reality, this is now the world that I live in, and don't worry about what the next moment will bring, nor what could have been, nor be fraught with anxiety and racked with grief and regret and fear. Because if you say, well, if I cannot control it whatsoever, there's no sense in being afraid of it. There's no sense in trying to be anxious about it. There's no sense in reacting to it. So that's the Stoic part of it. I can't do anything about this. Then ignore it. Just say, okay, I can't do anything about this. What can I do except ignore that for now? So that's the situation I'm in, and look for the joy in the existence that I have.
It's acknowledging what you are capable of, what virtues, what talents, what qualities that are inherent in you. Because this whole idea is to find your authentic self. There's no projections of anything else. The Stoics basically are teaching you to walk a balanced road, so that you're not swayed one way or the other by the occurrences of the outside. What's most important is the qualities that you possess internally, and are you able to express them? So this is the reason why they were not happy with toxic emotions, as they said. It just produces more stress, more counterproductive states, and it just doesn't help. Maybe that's the best way to do it. They want to come to the solution as it is, not what the projection is or what the society is looking at it and saying, well, it turns it this way. This is things that happen to you are not voted on by the masses, and which way they say the outcome should be is where that's going to happen. It's not a democracy that way. The events of what goes on in this world are not always a democratic thing. We don't like that, so we don't want to have that. It's like none of us want death. We don't want to have it. Well, when you look at it that way, that's the end. Nobody says that they don't want birth, but they do say they don't want death. And it's just birth and death, beginning and an end. Life is not the opposite of it. Life is what you are weaving in between those 2 points.
And the Stoics would say, as you just said, that that and this kind of, again, they weren't what Tolle says, but you could see it in them that they're saying you don't identify yourself, you don't make who you are out of what happens to you. And that's where the virtues come in. Their expression of these virtues are all really internal. It's an internal value system. It says, this is who I am. I am a courageous, honest, virtuous person who will keep his or her word and will see things clearly. And what I can't change, I will endure. Well, all that says is that you're not identifying yourself with the situation. You're not saying, well, if this happens to me, I'm a bad person. And if this happens to me, I must be a good person. Or this one doesn't deserve this one doesn't deserve that. And why me? Why not them? When something bad happens, you say, well, why me? No, the Stoics say, no, it has nothing to do. The person that I am, and Tolle would say the identity that you have, the I, the true being, does not change based on circumstance, does not change based on, the thoughts of others or your own internal thoughts. You have an identity which is unique and eternal, and they didn't put it in those terms. And Stoicism recognizes that when they talk about virtue, it's virtue with a capital V. It's virtue through the ages. That's why Aurelius talks about organizing a whole society, a whole ethos, a whole a whole set of mores and morals based on Stoicism for us as a societal organizational. Now, it never happened, and there was no Stoic society, but they argued for it strongly, and it had many, many converts, in essence, that were looking at Stoicism as sort of the way, if you will.
Well, it's the 4 cardinal virtues are tools in your toolbox to not be completely engaged with the dramas that life has. And let's face it, Greek dramas, everybody dies.
Everybody dies.
So understanding that that's true.
It's true. I don't know where that came from, but it's very true.
Well, okay. Can you see that this was their television back then? They had all these dramas
and also the chorus.
Yes, meeting and listening to all these plays where inevitably everybody dies. Now, as a Stoic, you're basically saying, now wait a minute. There's more to it than just what you're portraying here. But the 4 virtues, the temperance, courage, justice, practical wisdom, those 4. Now, as we said, practical wisdom is common sense.
Yeah.
And have you seen those 4 in people around you? I know for common sense, the phrase is, of course, common sense is not common.
Right.
But people who are courageous. Temperance, balanced. My goodness, it's a whole chapter in and of itself. And what you were speaking of had to do with justice in its true sense. Knowing right and wrong and what is the appropriate action at this time.
Yeah, regardless.
For what was done. So what they're talking about is coming back to these virtues that they felt, I can speak English, these virtues that they felt are intrinsic to every human being. Now, whether or not you develop them is the question. And they felt that this should be the duty of everyone to develop these four.
Yeah.
So it's another way of coming back to the moment of now, just the Greek way.
Right. Well, and you know, the thought that was behind it was very much concerned with that which happens is, you know, it's the Aristotelian precept. The prime precept of Aristotle was A is A. What does that mean? A is A. Well, A is not anything else but A. And so in and of itself, A has an existence and it has an identity. And so what he really could have said is, it is what it is. You know, in modern parlance, A is A means it is what it is. It's not what you think it is. You don't look at A and say, well, it could be a V upside down with a thing in the middle. Yeah, it could be, but it's not. A is A. That which is, is. Now okay, so what are you? You are the observer of what is. You are the observer of A. And that's very important for two reasons. You have to observe A, and we know from our quantum mechanics that the observer is incredibly important. You have to observe reality, the moment of now. Look at it. And then know that there's two things about it that are immutable. One is, it's going to change. Two is, it is what it is right now. And then you, as the observer of the moment of now, only have basically two things that you can do about it. You can decide what you feel about it, how you're going to feel about the moment of now, and then what you can potentially do about it. But you have to divorce yourself from whys and how and why me's and why not them's and I don't like and I do like, okay? And you also have to divorce yourself about the action. You have to say, well, you know, here's the moment of now. Is there anything I can do about it? No. Well, then that's the moment of now. The Stoics had this wonderful insight, and were they alive today, I think they attend many of Tolle's lectures, because Stoicism and Zen Buddhism and what Tolle is talking about and what many other modalities are talking about really do concern themselves directly with two things, the being and the universe, the A and the observer of A. And to the extent that you can very clearly observe the moment of now, as intimately as you can, with every sense you possess, and realize that that's it, and it's going to change. But where you are right now, with all your common sense, and your thoughts, and your virtues, and everything else, is the observing point of the moment of now. The moment of now is just there to be observed and to be experienced. And in doing that, properly, with this internal virtues, you will find joy, and you will eschew all anxiety and grief and fear, because these, you know, the so-called negative emotions, but these things which steal joy from your being are all kind of made up, if you will, by that which is not you, which is your fantasy about what may happen. All the thoughts and emotions and things that you that you will let run wild and control you rather than control them as the being, as the consciousness. They didn't have that word either, but the consciousness here understands that there is nothing but my consciousness and its virtues, if you will, and everything else outside of my consciousness is the moment of now. And there are other consciousnesses in the world. You're not a singular consciousness, but they have their own moment of now. And you have the relationship with the other. I mean, it builds from there. But all the other stuff that's stealing joy from you is largely because you make it up. You know?
Well, it's your response to it.
Yeah.
What you have chosen as your response. One of the things that the Stoics were big on was you can't divide yourself. You must treat yourself as a unified whole. So what they say is we are and must remain a unified self. We can't complain or blame anyone else. It's best to deal with our own demons.
Mm-hmm.
And that acknowledgement of we all have things, negative things. I mean, they were big on writing about anger, the Stoics, and how to handle your anger. But they felt that was a personal demon that you had to be able to manage in some way, shape, or form. But the idea that you're a unified being, and you can't overlook it. In other words, when you're concentrating only on or letting yourself be taken by an emotion, you're splitting a piece of yourself off.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be aware of that. This is part of the temperance. You have to be aware of when one part of you is overdone.
Yeah.
Overweight almost. So all of you should weigh in equally together. That's the idea. You bring it all back in. And that's the core of temperance, the balance point. And to, again, come back to observing it almost dispassionately. That's why people think Stoics have no emotion.
Yeah.
But to really see what's going on, and not be moved one way or the other into a certain section of a different part of you, the emotional part, the thinking part, the body part. You're being swayed by something. To acknowledge it. It doesn't mean that, like, if you're hungry, yeah, you need to eat. You have to go eat. It's not ignoring that and going into asceticism where you're punishing your body because, hey, I feel that I need to do this right now. There is a balance point for all of it.
Well, it's a nice, there's a lot there, but I mean the echo of the pain body,
right,
and the echo of certain various neuroses and psychoses where people tear themselves into multiple entities, if you will, and they sort of talk to themselves within themselves and argue amongst themselves, and one part of you seems to dominate the others, and says, well, you're this, you're that, you're never any good. The Stoics would look at that and say, no, you have to, rather than entertain these internal demons and let them have a voice in your energy and tear yourself into pieces, the unified whole is the being. And they understood that with a different language. And they said, in essence, you're not to tear yourself into parts and argue within. The mastery, the realization of the unity of you, that you are a person, a being, and that all of these different aspects of your being, your thoughts, your emotions, your body, and the needs thereof, are to be seen not as entities in their own right, but yet parts of a whole that the consciousness contains. This is the idea. This unitary you contains all these other things, but they don't become their own, voices. They don't become their own entities. So they were very, very prescient in their own way, in their own language, of understanding that because you are a singular, unitary being, all these other aspects of you had to be managed. I think that's the word they keep using. You have to manage yourself, understand the components of who you are, because all people have them. Understand that you can't let any one aspect of yourself become a dominant thing or to war amongst yourself. You have to use the consciousness as the field within which all these things exist and manage them. You did a lot of work with the young children, with the 4-year-olds, teaching them that their being, in essence, would be the place, the space for an emotion like anger or an emotion like fear, which rises up. Or we've seen it in many other modalities where, again, Buddhism, where the emotion rises up and you recognize, there it is, there's my fear, there's my anger, there's whatever the situation is, there's all these thoughts that come rising up to the top. And they're there, they're in front of you. And in Buddhism, if you engage, you split yourself apart. You put your energy into that thought or into that emotion. You let it carry you away. You're no longer at center, in balance. And that the Stoics had come to this in a completely different way, that you had to be in balance, in temperance, internally consistent, even with all these things that were going to be besetting you, all these emotions and thoughts and all the things and the variegacies of what happens in the world. No. You as a being in a consciousness, which is not the words they use, but you can see where they were going, have to manage all this. And manage it you will with this internal understanding that you are not to be torn apart. You have to remain yourself and understand that all these things that are happening to you are not you. They're just things that are happening to you. They're thoughts that you're having, emotions that you're having, or circumstances that come to you at this particular moment. Don't let them tear you apart. Don't let them wash you into some, maelstrom of emotion or thought. And they were very, very prescient, very far ahead.
Yeah, no, this is true. And just the understanding, they understood that unless you have engaged with these internal virtues and come to a point where you're your own philosopher. In other words, you have a philosophy for your life, a way to go. If you don't, then you're just part of the mob, that mob mentality. So they wanted the human being to become an individual, fully individual in and of itself, with that gift or piece that's within them that they can bring forward to the society.
Yeah.
And one of the things that always struck me about Stoics was that they were the ones who came up with "no man is an island."
Really?
Yeah.
That's the Stoics saying?
Yeah.
No man is an island?
Yes.
Well, I would have thought their saying would have been, get off my island. Okay,
that's
no man. Right. No man is an island. It's interesting. Which of the Stoics came up with that? Or maybe it doesn't say.
I can't say. Hierocles.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Hierocles. It's a work that he had entitled "On Appropriate Acts."
It wasn't Epictetus.
No.
Still my favorite Stoic name.
Okay. But the whole idea of no man is an island is understanding that we're all interconnected, and to treat every individual with respect. So for them, you have to treat your family as, there's a lot of love, your children, and that would be like the foundation, or the next is a citizen
of society.
Yeah. Yes. In other words, you're trying to bring the outer circles closer to you. You're acknowledging that there is a relationship that exists in this world, but you should be trying to have better relationships. So you would treat you treat your family like you treat yourself. Then you treat a friend as you would treat your family.
Okay.
And then you treat a fellow citizen as you would treat a friend. And treat a countryman as a fellow citizen. And finally, to treat a foreigner as you would treat a countryman. So you see this hierarchy of society that they were living in. It was very well defined. There was no fuzzy lines here. You're either a countryman or you're not.
Right. Well, I mean, this is sort of also and could be expressed as the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Exactly.
And so this is, again, this is Stoicism writ large. This is Stoicism to configure the society. And again, with the idea that the individual, okay, so where's the root of the society? The root of the society is the individual, and the individual's one main superpower, which is his or her free will to do, to understand what is happening in the moment of now, and then to act in such a way that you either remain yourself whole or treat others, the others who are also in that moment of now, as you would have them treat you. And that, if you write that large, it turns into a very sane society.
Yes.
A society which at its very basic precept holds one thing dear, that the individual is the most important thing in one regard, to be an individual and to be a being. And the second most important thing is that reality is reality, and everything you do to another individual must be done in the light of, would you want it to be done to you? So this turns into a very sane society.
Yes.
And probably why it was never tried.
Right. Well, they also felt that this is the only way humans would be able to develop develop themselves as a human being into a full, whole human being. You need to have other people around you in that interaction, and understanding that we're all going through the same thing.
I wonder, it's interesting that you mentioned this, because a lot of the Enlightenment thinkers, Locke and so on, with the whole idea of natural law and the individual, you can see that they must have read the Stoics, because there's a lot of that in Lockean philosophy and in Montesquieu and a lot of those other folks who were among those who influenced the American, the way America's initial guiding principles were laid down in our founding documents and so on. So Enlightenment thought was probably, a lot of it was based on Stoicism without perhaps necessarily saying that.
No, it's true. And then the final thing about Stoicism is persist and resist. It's all about progress, not perfection. Progress, not perfection. So, again, you maintain. You spoke about this earlier. Maintain this balanced point, and you endure.
Yeah. You endure what you need to endure. It's true, and and perhaps the best part that we can talk about Stoicism at this point is that it is a philosophy for the ages, and it is somewhat easy to apply. The principles are simple, and they resonate with people. So if you have any time at all over this long holiday season to spend a little time reading the Stoics, I would recommend it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It's developing those 4 virtues are incredible tools to manage your way through this life.
And to have a joyful existence.
Yeah.
And we are coming down to the end of this joyful hour. So is there anything else we want to get in at the very moment here?
Oh, no, just resist what you know is negative.
And persist.
And holding what is good within you and expressing it.
Right.
So I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.